Welcome to the Bayview Podcast with hosts Andrew Clark and Chris Emery. This is designed to be a discussion on all things life and faith. We hope this serves as a weekly resource and encouragement to you.
What's going on, Bayview? It's your host, Andrew, along with the other host, Chris. How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you today?
I am good. Glad to be back and recording. We had a chance to have a guest on and hear from Kim, so hopefully you've gone back and listened to Dr. Kim in that episode. But we're going to continue today just with kind of working through some spiritual rhythms and spiritual practices. And I'm excited about today because we're going to talk a lot about just health.
Mm-hmm.
I think as we've kind of talked and we're preparing for this, it kind of went from physical to spiritual to mental, just all kind of things, what makes a person healthy.
Yeah,
and
right.
Definitely want to avoid this idea of like the self-help and like some of that kind of stuff, but like really just what does it look like to be a whole person? Am I saying that right? Like, is that?
Yeah, I think
kinda...
so. And I think that health is a very hot topic right now in a variety of different avenues and genres. And I think we also want to be careful to make sure that we don't make anybody feel like, oh, if I'm not physically healthy in this area or something, that somehow directly, affects your spiritual relationship with Jesus. That's not what we're saying, and that's not the path we want to go down. I think that there are things that the Bible writes about, about our physical body. I think there are things that I know we all would like to do better.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the reasons why that's probably the most common New Year's resolution is something to do with our health. I'm going to work out more. I'm going to diet. I'm going to do this less, whatever it may be. So, yeah, but I think we do want to kind of broaden the scope because we did start with just physical.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you felt about it, but I kind of felt like, well, this might be a short podcast if we just stop right there because I'll be like, well, I do this and I try not to eat these things and that's it.
Try and fail. Yeah, that's the big one. Try not to eat late, and I do. But I agree. I think there's the more you get into it, the more you realize they're all connected in some ways.
Very much.
And we know there's physical ailments that some people there is nothing you can do about it, and
Correct.
there are side of those things. And I think it's important that we're not professionals in this area.
Right.
I believe we both have a good grasp on God's word and kind of what He shares about it, and maybe to just things that we've put into practice, but at the same time, like we understand, like it's not a one size fits all situation.
Right. And we're not going to come in with all the answers today, but maybe something we say can put you on the path of something you need to pursue.
Yeah.
Because there are going to be things maybe we talk about today that the next step would be contact a professional.
Yeah.
Get a hold of somebody that can help in this area. Because you and I have both been on the receiving end of that at different ways and different seasons. So I think that's another thing that we want to just make sure you understand today. We're just talking through kind of, again, as a resource for your week of, man, these are some of our experiences. Here's some of the things we've come across. And hopefully there's something here you can cling to or something that comes across right at the right moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just really piggybacking even off of the earlier episode where we talked about ways we've been influenced and ways that we've kind of seen ourselves grow and maybe like adopting different practices and things that have kind of really helped us become more full, more true, and more healthy. And so now I do think it's a natural shift into, okay, let's talk about being physically healthy and spiritual healthy and mentally healthy. Yeah. So, let's do this. Let's start with just the physical side of things. Like we don't got to give workout routines and all that, but maybe for you, like when you think of the physical health, and like you mentioned earlier, Scripture uses that language of our bodies being a temple and things like that. Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because physical health it's changed for me based on my age. Meaning this, I played college sports. I've been very active my whole life. Particularly soccer. So to play soccer, you've got to be in extraordinary good health. Never enjoyed the running aspect. Never really the whole runner's high thing. You're high to be a runner.
Never had that.
Yeah, never got that runner's high. but I understood the benefits of it.
Yeah.
And I think I've said this before, maybe in a message, that I don't think I shouldn't say this, but it doesn't seem to me why anybody would enjoy going to the gym for the sheer pleasure of working out.
Sure.
We go to the gym and work out for the sheer pleasure of the results of working out.
Yeah.
And I think that maybe that's where we are spiritually connecting this is like, what are the results that can come out of me taking care of my body? And we are all very familiar with the passages, particularly in 1 Corinthians 6, where it talks about that our bodies are a temple of the Holy Spirit. So I don't know how it is for you. Ever since I was a child, I've been told, hey, take care of that temple. Take care of that temple. And we should. We should. But I think that there's other things at play there as well.
Yeah.
So early in my life, I think it was be in shape for sports. That was the purpose, be in shape to compete. That was the purpose. As I've gotten older, now it's be in shape so you live to see 70.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, be in shape so that I can walk a golf course at 80. I see now, men that are 20, 30 years older than I am, and I'm just incredibly impressed with what they can still accomplish physically. And I know that took a commitment a long time ago. So my reason has changed, I guess.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And I in a similar boat, like just that idea of playing sports. And it was, I think the thing that I've seen definitely shift, and maybe it's probably always been there. I think I've just become more aware of it, is like we kind of put individuals on a pedestal, and we say, I have to look like that, or I need to feel like that to be as healthy as possible. And there is something to that. Like there's something to like people who've put the work in, they've put the effort in. Sure. Like, we see the Arnold Schwarzeneggers and all that kind of stuff, and the Olympians and things, and there's things to strive for. But I feel like that influencer, especially on social media, has really changed the idea of like, when it comes down to it, like just being active can have incredible benefits. A 20-minute walk or things like that. Like, and I think some of that sometimes gets lost in the weeds of what you're supposed to look like. Right. And if I look like this, then I will feel like this. Right. And I don't know, like, and sometimes you realize, I know for me, like, I wanted to stay active so that I could not only pick my kids up, but I can't wait till my son's a little bit older and I can start doing things with him and teach him a thing or two and be able to still remind him, because my dad did that for me. But so I've had to really, like, through this idea of being physical and being active, like really kind of weed through like what things I was allowing to maybe influence my goals. And that's probably been the biggest thing, is like just I'm a goal setter, and so that's been fun to kind of set a goal, set an idea, but not live and die by that either. Sure.
So I guess when we're talking physical, I think you've mentioned being active. I think that's a big part of it. So let's break that down a little bit, at least maybe how it pertains to our life. Because I don't think you're this way. I know I'm not this way. I'm not the over the top, what I would call like the health nut guy. Like I'm not that guy. I was kind of raised that way. Interestingly enough, when I was a child, my mom, she was that way. And growing up in Southern California, I guess that was kind of everybody. Maybe it was that way. I don't know. But like we didn't have candy, we didn't have chocolate, we didn't have sugar cereals. We had fresh granola, we had tofu, we had carob. Do you know what carob is?
Nope.
It's like fake wax chocolate.
Gross.
And so we had carob covered raisins, which is like great. So
oh my goodness,
old shriveled grapes with fake chocolate. Let's do that. There's always a big old jug of unsweet sun tea being cooked out of the sun. And so I for us, a big treat was maybe every once in a while she would bring home a box of Honey Nut Cheerios.
Ooh.
And that was just like the epic,
that was like dessert
moment.
For breakfast then.
It was incredible. We were probably like on this crazy sugar rush all day because we had that little bit of sugar. So I'm familiar with that a little bit, and no problem with those that are. Maybe some of you listening, maybe you're vegan, maybe you're vegetarian, maybe you are the no gluten, no sugar, no MSG, no preservatives, no anything like that. So I'm definitely more on the yes side.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
But I'm also recognizing, for me at least, that I kind of subscribe to the school of thought of everything in moderation.
Yeah.
So I really have been trying, like, I know my weak points. I'm a late night snacker. So after 9 o'clock, even 10 o'clock, man, if I'm sitting around watching TV or a movie, I'm ready to be eating while I do that. And I know that, if I go grab the bag of cookies or the whole thing of them, I'm not going to eat just a couple. I'm going to eat a sleeve or a whole row. If I know there's leftovers in the fridge. So, I mean, I've had to say, okay, what are some things in my life that I know these are my weak points? These are things I know aren't good for me. And so how do I put up my own personal boundaries, I guess, for lack of a better word, and just have that? Because we read that verse about the Holy Spirit, but then in that chapter, I was reading something by John Piper recently, and he actually points out that earlier in that chapter, the whole topic is being set up by the concept of being enslaved. Yeah. And so, I mean, I love food. I could totally be enslaved to Chips Ahoy cookies and McDonald's French fries. Absolutely. Yeah. If I could drink, I'd be fine with that as my diet. Yeah. But I know that's not good, and so I think it comes down. I think that's where the spiritual aspect comes in. Yeah. Is that enslavement? Because one of the fruits of the Spirit is definitely self-control. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And I think that's like, I think a lot of the goals set from a physical side, the winning part of that is those who are disciplined. Yep. And I think that's why it is tied into this idea of spiritual disciplines and rhythms in our life. It's like a lot of times that ability to put a boundary in place and to respect it. Like you were talking about runners and like a runner's high and all that kind of stuff. And I have a couple buddies who are like my brother and another who are really into running, and my youngest brother, not Jared.
Not your middle
but they talk a lot about this idea of like when you go in with a game plan,
right,
for a long run, and this idea of like you actually get better by running slower earlier and like running with your heart rate a little lower, and like it's over time. It's almost this idea of delayed gratification. And that in a long run, you'll actually build your endurance, be able to run longer, run faster, run harder. But it starts by going slow and having the discipline to actually build onto something.
Right.
And I think that plays into our lives with almost anything. Like the idea that maybe you're not a Bible reader, and we'll talk about a lot more of this in another podcast, but starting somewhere and slowly building on it and putting that place in. And a lot of times when we see, like, you brought up the New Year's resolution and going to the gym, most resolutions fail. I think it's like January 14th or 17th. Don't quote me on this. It's like Quitter's Day. Like it's like literally 2 weeks and that New Year's resolution's done. They say you got to make it to like 90 days to actually have like some sort of habit built when it comes to the gym and physical stuff. But a lot of it is self like unforgiveness. It's, I missed. Whatever.
Right.
But that carries over into so many things in our life. Like, I missed a couple days reading my Bible. I'm done.
Yeah.
I missed that counseling appointment. I did this. And we like, instead of being like, whoa, like that idea of like forgiving, showing some grace, right? And I think we all could use a little more self-grace in that. Like that snowballs very quickly. The negative side snowballs very quickly, and then we've just given up.
Yep.
And so, there might be someone out there listening who has a lot of goals physically, and you feel like, man, I just can't get started, or maybe you got started and something happened. A lot of times it's tragedies, holidays, like it's all these things that are the unexpected that will derail things so quickly for us. And it's like, it just takes the discipline to start and just build like one brick at a time, one step at a time, whatever it is. And that's not just, I think, for working out. I really think that carries into almost anything in your life.
I think you're absolutely spot on. I think that comes down to the personal disciplines.
Yeah.
Personal disciplines are important in so many different aspects of who we are, and I think that's a big deal. And, with the physical side of it, then I think that, where we are all physically, it's different for individual. There's no, this isn't about, just getting, like you said, getting ripped, getting whatever. But I think it is about recognizing, okay, so what are the benefits of when I feel good in my health? What are the benefits? So if we look at the result of that, I know for me, certainly more energy.
Yeah.
So my energy then allows me to maybe be more productive, more attentive, more present. If I'm in my worst spots and maybe I haven't been active. I've been kind of just slouching off of that, eating poorly. I can feel it. I get home in the late afternoons or evenings, and my wife is there, and maybe the kids or grandkids are around. I just want to take a nap.
Yeah.
And not that naps are bad.
Yeah.
In fact, I've learned to. I spent the first 49 years of my life not taking naps, and all of a sudden I turned 50. I'm like, man, a nap sounds pretty good.
I can build my whole day around when that nap's going to happen.
Should have more. Yeah. So I'm not slamming naps, but I'm saying so that's for me. That's one of the benefits.
Yeah.
I feel better.
Yeah.
And ready.
Yep.
For whatever.
There's a lot of mental clarity. Like I think for me, like that's, and we'll talk here in a little bit about some of the more mental side of things, but I have found as my physical part of me being physical has changed from, and active has changed from the competitive side to just like almost that maintaining side, the maintenance side of things. It's become more maintenance for the mind, and really is like there is something about, I mean, I've been in like sermon prep or message prep for things, and I've gone on a run and with the intention of like, I'm just going to run until like my brain shuts off, and what happened, like I just need that mental clarity that comes from it. And like, there's been moments when I've literally thought about anything under the sun, and all of a sudden I'll be on mile whatever, and then my brain's like, boom. And I'll have like this moment of like, oh, that's the message.
Yep.
That's the point I was missing. That's like, and it's definitely like a God thing for sure. But like just that mental clarity, or if I've been stressed, the idea of to go out and to lift heavy weights and do something that do like almost that physical breakdown allows for that mental clarity. And my wife and I, we found that with having kids and through COVID and all that kind of stuff, like all we could do was go for walks, but that has become almost like, not all the time, but like almost like a relational reset.
Absolutely.
Our kids, they're a little quieter when they're in their strollers, and they're a little, they're more entertained by what's going on. And her and I just get to actually like have a semi like peaceful conversation. And I have found as someone who is I'm not like super, I'm a processor. So I'm not necessarily a quick like responder, like doing that physical in that walk with her. Like I find myself way more spiritually or like mentally clear and way more like, hey, this is what I've been thinking.
Right.
Hey, let's talk about some deeper things right now, because I just feel like I'm doing something active with my body, and my brain's able to kind of like slow down and release. And so that's been a huge benefit. It's just that mental clarity side of things, and that might not be for everyone, but
I think that there probably are a variety of benefits that may differ between all of us. I would imagine that maybe you're listening, and here's the deal. I don't think any one of us needs somebody else to come in and tell us the areas of our physical health that need to be addressed.
Sure.
You know. Like you know what you eat that you shouldn't eat. You know what you're not eating that you should be eating. We also know that changes all the time, because what was good for us yesterday apparently is now terrible for us now. I don't know what's up with that. Like, I still love a glass of milk every day, but apparently milk is like toxic, poison for our body. I don't know. I'm drinking milk every day. Bring it on. Yeah. But and so I think the sometimes the fallback is that because I can't do everything, I'm going to do nothing.
Sure.
I can't ever look like that guy or that girl. I can't ever get over this hump. So I'm just going to do nothing. Yep. Whereas the reality is, do something.
Yeah. That's those small disciplines.
Yeah.
Like that's that idea of like just getting going. Like I think it was said, we were talking about like, this idea of like accountability groups and things like that, and some on past episodes, and it was like almost like the advice of just start, like just doing something is better than nothing.
Right.
And you totally said it, and that was so true.
Yep.
And that's almost that self-defeating talk of like, well, I could never be like that.
Right.
Or I'm too old, so I can never do that. Or it's just like, yeah, but that's not an excuse to quit.
No, not at all. And you'll quickly begin to feel the benefits of it for sure. So we're not going to post any diet plans, or we're not going to give you any workout routines.
I don't have a diet plan.
Dude, I don't either. I think my diet plan is mostly like, how guilty do I feel about that meal to determine what I'm going to eat this meal. So my guilt, determines my path, I guess. I don't know. So I don't know. We both had good lunch
Yeah,
today.
it
We
was
had a lot of
super good.
protein for lunch. So
Yeah.
I thought you were going to go. So short story.
Yeah.
We had a big event this week at the church. There's some leftover pulled pork. And so several of the staff members were in there just chowing down on the pulled pork. And I was watching your plate. I was waiting to see if you're going to use a bun or not.
Yeah.
Because I know that, like, if we're healthy, if we're real, we're not going to use a bun. I'm just going to
Yeah.
eat the protein. So I was conflicted because I wanted a bun.
Yeah.
But I wasn't going to eat a bun if you didn't eat a bun. So there's a great level of relief when I saw you pull out that bun. I'm like, yeah, let's go. Now I ate 2, but
Yeah.
Whatever.
It happens.
So thank you.
It happens.
So.
You're welcome. You do you. Like, that's just those little things. Like, but
so physical health, and these are obviously all connected. But then I think another really big topic would be this topic of mental health.
yeah.
And there is connection, not all the time. But what has been maybe your exposure to mental health? Some of the things that fall into that category. There are certain topics that we're not going to tackle, or maybe what's been some of your personal journey in some of those areas.
Yeah.
Whatever you feel like sharing. But what when we say mental health from a Christian perspective, what are we talking about?
Yeah. What's interesting is I think a lot of times, and this was definitely me, when that word or that phrase like mental health and mental illness and that kind of stuff gets used a lot. Like, I always would jump to the worst of the worst.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right, the stuff that, like, again, we're not professionals, so to even talk about it's like, no, like, there's like the legitimate mental illness. There's people who like need help, and that's a real thing.
Absolutely.
And I always thought it was like, when someone would say that, I would think, well, I'm not like that.
Right.
Like, I'm a happy person.
Right.
Like, I got a good life. So I would just kind of roll with it. And obviously, like, as life has gone on, and I think maturity has come into play, and just different things in life have happened. I have found it where it's like, it's not so much like, oh, I'm not terrible, or like I don't use that as like a negative. Almost like I'm not really bad, like I'm not really sick, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, yeah, but doesn't mean my mental health is incredible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mental health could be like that anxiety, that depression side of things, the self view, like. To beat yourself up and all that kind of stuff mentally. And I found definitely post like my father's passing and just, the birth of my son. And there's a lot of things that kind of happened all right in a row where it's like, for me, mental health, like grief has played a massive role in my mental health, my mental state, like, and all that. And so having to walk through and kind of seek out the help and go to counseling and all that kind of stuff. Things that, I'll be honest, early on, in my teens and early 20s, like I felt like, oh, I don't need that stuff. Right. And again, I was being kind of that immature thought of like, that's only for those who are like sick. And it's like, man, I'm finding even now, like, as things are better, and I'm using air quotes if you're not watching, like better, it's like, I just started going to counseling again. And it was just like this huge, like, wow, thank you. Like this, like, why wait till it's bad, more or less?
Correct.
And again, I mean, no disrespect, no, but like, why wait till it's like, oh, there seems like there's no turning back to actually get the help.
Right.
And so, like I said, there's been other things that have, from staying active and eating healthy, and there's all those benefits to like your mental health stuff. But I'm a massive proponent of talk to someone, get the help that's necessary.
And I think that what you're saying, what you said is so great, and that is that sometimes we're like, well, I'm not bad enough. I'm not depressed enough. I'm not anxious. I'm not bad enough to need that yet.
Yeah.
And I think some of that is fed by this lie that I got this.
Yeah.
I'm fine. I can do it. Because I think I kind of early on in my young years, even in ministry, I kind of looked at counseling as like, well, yeah, that's important for those people that are really going to need it.
Yeah.
But somewhere deep inside, I think I felt like, well, those people are so weak. And so now I'm making counseling a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
Asking for help a sign of weakness, which is the complete opposite of what it actually is.
Yeah.
That those that have the capacity to ask for help, recognize when they need it, that's incredible strength.
Yeah.
That's incredible courage.
Yeah.
And, so if you're listening here and maybe that's where you're wavering, like, oh, please listen to both of us. Like I as well, I've benefited from great counseling over my life. Some of it individual counseling, some of it marriage counseling, some of it because these are things that I needed someone else to speak into my life. God used these other wise voices to speak into me, to pull out things that I maybe I wasn't ready to pull out. So I think there's so much there because the things are real, and we certainly have a society that's not dismissing these things anymore. There might have been a time way back where someone says, well, I'm depressed, and I think society was like, well, then just buck up, camper. Yeah. Stop being depressed.
Pull up your
like
bootstraps. I think that was did they used to say that?
Yeah, exactly. Or look at that kitten poster. Hang in there. Can we get one of those on the wall? And you're hanging there. But it is real. Anxiety is real. And so if you're listening, we hear us say this. We know these are real, and we're not. That's actually what we're saying. This isn't just pray it away all the time. Do you pray about it? 100%. Can God relieve it and release you from that? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he certainly possesses and can do that by his touch, but he very well may choose to utilize someone that he's gifted with those skills and talents to speak into your life and to counsel you through those moments. So the question isn't, will God do it? It's how will God choose to do it, and will we follow him in that guidance?
100%.
Because I looked up Christian mental health things, and I think some of the things that come to mind would be, fear, anxiety, worry, concern, panic. I don't know if you've ever. I don't think I've ever had a panic attack, but I've had some very close relationships, and they've had panic attacks, and it's actually it's kind of scary to watch.
Yeah.
And then you've got obsession or obsessive compulsive disorder even.
Yeah.
And now there are things that go much further than that. Again, not really for us to even dive into.
Yeah.
I'd be afraid to. Not that I'm an expert here, but I think these are more the common ones. These are things I think that are common among listeners.
Yep.
We all have. For me, I think if I had to say this is where I fall, I would be a worrier and fear.
Yeah.
Those would be my two go-tos. I was a worrier ever since I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Worried. And so I've had to really walk through that and seek help, but also identify why am I worrying and what do I need to do? What work do I need to do with God to address that? And then what work do I need to do with my life through God's help to address that?
Yeah. Well, because through counseling, what you end up finding is a lot of times the anger you feel or the fear that you feel is not the obvious. Mm-hmm. It's not what you think it is in terms of, it's not what's like, just in a space of vulnerability. Like I was really struggling with like my 3-year-old son and kind of feeling like this tension and, not having a dad of my own and like some of that kind of stuff of just like, well, I don't want to fail him and all that kind of stuff. And so I started talking about this with a counselor and, how do I respond and handle? And like, as we were talking and as he's asking those questions and we're just having this conversation, like it comes out like, well, a lot of that fear and, anxiousness and maybe worry was coming out in a form of anger, but it was really attached to like, I have some expectations that weren't met, and that I'm afraid that I'm not going to meet them. And so it's like, all of a sudden you get down to the root of things and you're like, oh, okay. And now you can actually begin to take the steps forward, go back to using that word discipline, start building in some discipline into your life to help in terms of that response and that, ability to interact in a healthy way and not be perfect. There's just life is life, like, but at the same time, like actually find maybe what you need to be praying on more, right? What actually needs to be taken to God, because it's one thing to say, hey, God, I'm angry all the time. And he knows,
right?
But there is something powerful when you can say, I'm angry all the time because, or it's really based out of this fear that I have. Like when you can start to speak those things out, like there's something powerful to that.
Absolutely.
And so that's been huge on my end to really see like the behind the curtain almost is what it feels like.
Yeah.
Of like, okay, what is actually going on here?
Right.
And not that you can't discover that on your own, but there is definitely something special about those who are gifted with counseling and who have spent the time and know the questions to ask and know the way to respond and direct you and to deal with this or seek further help here or any of that kind of stuff. So that's been huge.
Yeah. I think that's such a big deal to have that other voice.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we've said this before, the person we lie to the most is typically ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'm telling myself this lie. Maybe it takes that other person to be like, yeah, you're crazy, man. Like, come on. Like, that's not what's going on here. a phrase that comes to mind too when it comes to so many of these things: fear, worry, anxiety. A lot of these things, I think that affect all of us at different levels. And we just talked about this a little bit this past Sunday. Is this concept phrase of what if? I think the what ifs. I recently read a book by Max Lucado called Fearless, and there was a chapter in there he was talking about the what ifs that just overwhelm us. But what if? I remember as a kid, I remember my parents anytime they went out and we had a babysitter. That was my fear. What if mom and dad die in a car accident? Yeah. What if mom and dad don't come home? What if? And I'm sure a lot of us as adults have plenty of what ifs that overwhelm our mind. What if there's war? What if there's famine? What if the economy falls apart? What if I never get a raise? The list goes on and on and on. And what I have found in my life when those what ifs are overwhelming me, what I'm really asking is this: what if God doesn't keep his promise?
Yeah.
That's really what I'm asking.
Yeah.
What if everything I read, and again, we just talked about this past Sunday, what if everything I read, what if everything he says, what if God doesn't come through?
Yeah.
Now I got to worry. And I think that's the basis why he says, listen, don't worry about tomorrow. Don't worry about what you're going to eat, going to drink. He's saying, don't worry because I've told you, I've got this.
Yeah.
I've got you. And that's the battlefront, I think, for a lot of our mental issues that we have as followers of Jesus.
Yeah.
Do we still need help? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do we still need to go talk to people? Absolutely. Are there some people that need to benefit from some medications that help balance them out? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm not debunking any of those things, but I am saying that don't go to the counselor, don't go to medications, and in the process of that, forget to also make sure you get to God.
Yeah.
Deal with your God issue while you're working on all of the other.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and so much of that stuff, and again, this is at least for me, is just based in a desire for control.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ask, what if? Because almost like we think, oh, God doesn't have it, and really it's like, yeah, but I don't have it. So like, what if? Right? And it really comes back to, and even like I said, just back to that example with my son, like I can't control in the end, like how the man he becomes and what he's supposed to do with his life. And there's that part that's an anxious tension of just like, but I want to.
Right.
But I think that plays into so much fear and anger and other things, is that feeling of not having control. And the reality is you don't. Like, your life is that with no control.
Yeah.
And it's, if you can, I 100% agree. Like, that ability to give that to God, and while you also are seeking the help you need and whatnot, like, and just trusting that, he's got it.
And I think a good Christian counselor, that's why I think you and I both only refer to faith-based counselors. They're going to put that together. They're going to connect those two pieces there. They're going to help you professionally, but they're going to do it from a faith-based approach. And I've sat with counselors that were not faith-based. I've sat in on, listening sessions or whatever, and it's to me, it's a little puzzling. It's like, man, like, it feels like you're getting half the help.
Sure.
You're getting some of that self-help stuff. You're getting some of the clinical stuff that's important, but you're missing the most important part of it. You're missing the God part, the God aspect. So definitely we're advocates of good Christian counseling. If you're a member of our church family, we have several counselors that we trust.
Yeah.
We're more than happy to refer you to them and help you find what you're looking for. So maybe today you're listening, you're like, you know what? Yeah, I hear you. I need help.
Yeah.
I can't keep doing this on my own. It's time.
Yeah.
Please contact either one of us.
Yeah. Strongest thing you can do is ask for help.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
That sense of, there's no weakness in saying, hey, I need help.
Mm-hmm. Third part of all this, then, I think, is one that probably gets talked about less than maybe the other two, and that's this whole concept of emotional health.
Yeah.
Emotional maturity, even. And I see so much of what's going on in our world, and I just finished reading a book not long ago about about emotional health within the church and within Christians, and the book is really kind of highlighting that, man, so much what we see happening, a lot of it's because we got a bunch of emotionally immature, unhealthy people. Yeah. And there's something about, now we're dealing with something different than just mental health. Now we're dealing with the emotions inside. Have you done reading? What's been your exposure to this idea of emotional health?
The biggest thing is now just having children and realizing that a lot of emotional, like learning to walk happens now. And there's so much where it's like the traumas, right? Or the not traumas, but like the meltdowns and the yelling and the crying and we'll laugh. 'Cause like in one moment, you know, my wife's trying to put our son to bed and he's like just losing it. And then all of a sudden he'll sit up and be like, okay, Mom, it's time for bed. Okay. And he'll like lay down and go to bed, and she'll just like walk out of the room, just like stunned. And it's just like, yeah, they're like emotionally learning to walk.
Right.
And the best thing we can do is like kind of be there to like help and support. But the idea of me responding emotionally, how that just doesn't literally fixes nothing. Right. But I think for the own emotional side of things, like for myself personally, like one, and I've not even done, again, I'm not an expert. I've not done any reading on this, but I think there's something about like sometimes the social norms, I think, affect our emotional health, if I'm being honest. Like men don't cry. And like some of those things that maybe are not quite a thing anymore, but I know as I was being raised, like that was a subtlety of like, yeah, men don't cry, or like be tough, like some of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, but sometimes watching a movie and just having a good cry or like an epic, I mean, I don't joke when I've cried at like Kitchen Nightmares, like shows like that of just like the redemptive side, like redemption stories, like just get me. And I think there's some that's an emotionally healthy thing. It's like I always tell students, like, it's okay to have emotions. God's a big God. Like he's not scared of your emotions. He's not shocked by your anger. He's not frightened by your tears. Like he understands. He created emotions. There's a benefit to understanding your own emotions and not just flying off the handle.
Right.
But this idea of to keep them suppressed or to not allow yourself to be emotionally healthy or emotionally aware, that's dangerous in my opinion.
Very much.
And I do believe like God's okay with you being emotional with him, finding yourself at his feet, anger, crying, upset, sad, like that stuff is beneficial.
I agree. Well, I mean, I think I've counseled people along that line more than once of saying like, listen, tell God how you feel. God's a big boy. God can take it. If you're angry, tell him you're angry. If you're sad, David did that throughout the Psalms. It wasn't like all the Psalms were just like, oh, thank you for everything great. It's like, my enemies are at the door. Why have you left me here? And so I think God's a big God. And so one, express that to him for sure. I think so much, too, of what you're saying as you're talking about, you know, our responses, our reactions, the way we handle things, clinging to some of those misappropriate terms of, you know, men don't cry. How much of that comes back to we follow those lessons or we follow those sayings because of the power of how people see us. Yeah. So I don't want to cry because then they won't think I'm a man. Yeah. I don't want to do this or I do this so they think this. So now what we're coming to, I think so much of our emotional health comes down to where's my identity? Yeah. If my identity is wrapped up in opinions and compliments and other people telling me good things, well, what's going to happen is that fuel, that as a source is very empty. It's very short-lived, but I'm going to get a taste of it. Yeah. So now I'm going to go after it more. And I mean, I have nobody specific in mind, so please trust that if you feel like I'm talking to you. But I think that I feel almost sad for the people that I see post like multiple selfies a day on social media, multiple things. Look at me run, or look. Be proud of it. I'm not saying that. Again, if you're a runner, rock on, praying for you. But I just sad when I watch how many people, they're surviving on those tiny little nuggets of identity building. Yeah. From strangers who are commenting on social media.
The dopamine hit or whatever.
Yeah, it is. It's that little ejection, but it's so short-lived. Yeah. One of the great things I think we work hard at helping people discover, doing what we do as pastors, is helping them discover their identity in Christ. Yeah. Your identity is not out in the world. It's not from the people around you. Their approval means nothing. You know, Paul said it best. You know, I'm not here for your approval. I'm only here for the approval of God, for the approval of Him. And maybe I'm sure you've heard the Christian cliche that we do this for an audience of one.
Yeah.
And I've been on the other side of that.
Yeah.
I mean, doing what we do in the public eye, we kind of live in this fishbowl of ministry. And
Mhm.
so, sure, there are times where, I'll get done with a message or an event, and I go home like, man, nobody said anything good about that.
Yeah.
Must have really tanked that one today.
Why did no one clap?
Yeah, no one clapped. Yeah. But, yeah, so I think that's where a lot of that has to do with it as well, is where are we finding our identity?
Yeah. Yeah, I heard a quote that was basically just the encouragement to not let people's perspective become your reality. And that's what ends up happening. And it's, you and I've talked often, it's why does the negative comments, why does one outweigh every positive comment? And it's all of a sudden we're seeking that one individual's approval, or I'm going to prove that person wrong, or I'm going to show them, right? Blah, blah, blah. And before long, you're being told or being encouraged in this way, or pointing that out to, you care about nothing else than trying to like get back or prove them wrong.
Right.
And like, I do think there's something emotionally healthy about, well, yeah, that is a mean thing, or that doesn't feel good.
Right.
And recognizing that. But I've had to learn, like, almost like, was there something though I could learn from that statement? Was that just a straight up painful, was that perspective they might have, was that just completely false, or is there a takeaway?
Right.
There are a majority of the time when the negative is just that, it's just negative. But I think emotional awareness and some of that kind of stuff, to at least step back and be like, well, that's just one perspective,
right? Or
that's just one thought. Like, that's been a huge thing. So that again, just that quote of letting other people's perspective become your reality, like that, if we're not careful, the things people say about us or whatnot can really shape our whole worldview. It can shape a lot of things that we have no intention of letting them have that much say in our life. Right. And I think back to your point of the audience, one idea of us being, or even us being made in God's image, like, you can very quickly lose yourself and lose like your true identity and who you really are, your purpose in life, and made to glorify God and to really, bring him praise in all things that you do. And before long, all things we do are to bring praise for ourselves.
Right.
And we've lost this whole direction in life and this whole idea of what really matters.
Right. And it's interesting, I was just thinking as you were talking that, we desire to have the positive feedback from the world around us, from the people, but there are some things they say that stick, but it's never the positive things.
Yeah.
So like if you post a picture on social media and you get, 15 people, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so beautiful. Well, that feels really, really good, but it doesn't last the next day. The next day, if you struggle with that, you probably wake up feeling not beautiful, or whatever we all struggle with. You feel not smart. You feel not whatever. But you know what does stick is the negative ones.
Yeah.
So when you hear a negative comment, oh, you're not beautiful, you're damaged, you're terrible, you're mean, you're ugly, whatever, man, those stick.
Yeah.
Like, those identities aren't going away. And I think that then becomes who we really believe we are. So we work harder to mask them and overcome them with these superficial exterior things, again, from those same people, that same source. Yeah. And none of it's fulfilling. None of it works. And we're never free from any of it. Yeah. It's only when we allow ourselves to truly be lost in this reality that we are children, we're sons, we're daughters, we're children of his, we're of God.
Yeah.
That's my identity, is that he loved each of us so much that and there's so much value that he actually sent his son Jesus to come down here and live, die, suffer, come back to life after 3 days, just for each of us.
Yeah.
Just for you. And that was driven by this incredible love for you and this incredible sense of value for who you are.
Yeah.
And God, I don't know if you ever heard, I remember as a kid, I would heard, another saying of like, oh, God doesn't make any mistakes. And it's like, okay, yeah, ha, ha, ha. But that is true. Like, God's not an accidental God. God didn't accidentally do this. He He didn't create you 87% of the way and let the last 13% kind of figure itself out. He was very intentional. We have an intentional God. We're told he's a designer. Ephesians 2 says that he calls each of us a really unique word. He calls us his masterpiece.
Yeah.
What a crazy word.
Yeah.
To be attached to any one of us.
Yeah.
Because I've never heard of a bad masterpiece.
Mm-mm.
Or an accidental masterpiece or a horrible masterpiece. No artist is like, man, that's the worst painting I've ever done. That's my masterpiece.
It's a masterpiece, yeah.
No, masterpiece is a word that you associate to a rare, beautiful thing, a rare work that comes along once in a lifetime, that doesn't just happen. Man, that is so incredible. That's what we don't understand that because we can't understand the omnipotence of God, that he can love at that level and exist at that level. But that is what each of us are.
Yeah.
Some way, somehow. He specifically did it. Satan, world, people around us, they want to tell us the opposite.
Yeah.
You're broken, you're damaged, you're unloved, you're unwanted, you're abandoned, you're alone, you're dirty, you're filthy. That is not what Jesus came to do.
Yeah.
He came to tear those labels off and to restore us, to redeem us, to forgive us, to make us new, to make us, to call it to us to be his children. I mean, that's our identity.
Yeah.
And I think that my emotional health flourishes when I find myself in that realm of whose I am.
Yeah, so good. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. We hope this was helpful for you today. Again, we aren't saying we have all the answers or the experts by any means. And so, but we certainly wanted to make sure that we spent some time with you here this afternoon, just sharing a little bit of things, and hopefully something in here was something you needed for your heart. Maybe it sparked something in you. Again, if anything we talked about today helped you find recognition that you need some further help beyond just listening to us, please reach out to us.
Yeah.
You can find our contact info on our website, bayviewchurch.net. We would be happy to refer you to some people that this is their area of expertise, people 100%. That we trust.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to add before we say goodbye?
No, strongest thing you can do is ask for help. And I think that's it's physical, mental, spiritual, like any of that stuff that if you don't know, like the best thing you can do is go looking for answers and saying, hey, I need help. And what does that look like? And so go for it.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you so much for tuning in with us today here on the Bayview Podcast. We look forward to this time with you each and every week, and we'll see you next time around.